Okay, so today is the first ride on the Kenevo. Pretty excited about that. Wish it was summer and dry conditions already, but I guess can't have everything, and it's just good to get out on the bike anyway. So yeah, just here at Woburn, I'm gonna get a few laps in. Well, I say a few laps, one lap. Probably in half the time. So yeah, let's switch to chest cam and see what this e-bike stuff is all about. Okay, so hopefully we're starting it in eco. Hopefully you can hear me over the wind noise. This is kind of a shakedown run for the e-bike. If you saw my last video, you'll know, well, you will have seen me talking about the bike and that I haven't ridden it yet. And this is the first time it's going to get dirty, I guess. So back on the Longslade Red Trail again. You know what? The gear change feels different. So we are in eco mode. And I'm going to have to apologise in advance for that squeak, because it's very annoying. The squeaking on the compression is from either the new rear mudguard, cable ties rubbing or something, or it is from the like tube that routes through the frame where the swing arm is, and the brake hose for the rear brake routes through that, and it routes through there, and the idea of it is, I guess, to protect the brake hose, but I had to move it all, dislodge it when I pulled the swing arm off. I did that to install the mudguard bit properly. Can we go to more assistance? Okay, now we're in turbo. Yeah, making light work of this, as you'd expect. This has changed a bit since last week. Wheel spin. Can we get up there? Keep it going. Oh. Slippery. Right out. Yeah. Currently on 25 psi. Usually run 20 for most duties on the Nomad. And I think I could go down at least a couple of psi on this, just to get a bit more traction. So anyone who's interested, I've got a coil shock that I've purchased coming for this. You may or may not be aware that, oh, this is boggy. These are supposed to come with coil, or at least they did in 2020 and 2021. They all both models, Comp and Expert, come with air shocks, which are
more tunable, as in not more tunable, more versatile. So you can set them up for different rider weights easily via air pressure, pretty much. Obviously in some cases you need to change the you need to put like a token, a stick stuck in my leg there, put air tokens in or whatever, but most of the time just changing the air pressure gives you what you need. Oh, tight. Yeah, this is quite a slop fest today. So yeah, come with air shocks instead of coil. The bomber coil was failing on the comp model, whether that's mostly a shock issue or a combination of both, it being a shock issue and let's say the forces that are exerted by the design of this bike and the frame, if you know what I mean. Just kind of amplifying the problem. I don't know, but ultimately, yeah, come with an air shock. The air shock saves weight, it's more versatile, it's probably cheaper than the manufacturer slightly. Yeah, although from the research reading that I did, there's not much torque, or almost nothing torque wise. Just about. No talk of the RockShox one failing, by one comment that I saw. So I've got the RockShox one on its way to me off of the expert model. I'm keen to try it. Dog walkers. Oh yeah, alright. Yeah, the e-bike definitely spices up flat trails, or trails with slight inclines and stuff. So hard to pick the front up. It's heavy. Not what I'm used to. Fucking hell, this is fast. It feels fast, isn't it? I think it's the weight. The momentum of it, ridiculous. Very big pedals. Slowly and speed. Oh, sprayed. Thank you. have to say the motor is very quiet. The Shimano motor on the Deco I tried was a lot louder. Maybe because it had a lot of miles on it and it had been battered, being a demo bike. Perhaps, I don't know. Maybe it's just the nature of the motor. Worth me mentioning that that's not the EP8, not the clunking sound. I just mean like the general whirring sound. It's like a you definitely could hear it coming if you were like walking. What? Okay. I'll have to whack the handlebars on these trees like I did last time. One thing it takes a bit of getting used to is the motor run on. So after you stop pedaling, probably or maybe adjustable. I've not really looked, but the motor kind of keeps giving you power, which in some instances might be helpful, but sometimes it kind of pushes on the front. The seat seems pretty comfy, which is good. Yeah, apparently you can get e-bike specific seats which have, because obviously on an e-bike if you can do double the mileage compared to conventional, in theory your ass is most likely going to be on that seat twice as much. So they do e-bike specific seats, which from what I understand they have more flex in the rails for slight cushioning and probably some other design features as well, which make them kind of aimed more towards the e-bike. Let's go. Oh my god, it's fast. It goes fast anyway. Yep. 15 mile an hour cut off. Oh, good one, got my waterproof sealskin socks on. Okay. Yeah, without turning the motor assistance off, trying to change gear without any load is quite tricky, I think. Wow, hopefully the GoPro is still recording because I've not touched it. It's been I don't know, quiet really, just trying to get an understanding of how the bike operates and get a feel for it.
So that is the first ride of the Specialized Kenevo done. Not ideal conditions, to be honest. Pretty boggy, wet, hard going. Yeah, not a kind of flowy, dry, dusty, summery trails that I like to ride. But still, the Kenevo made a good job of powering through the mud, through the puddles and over the slippery wet routes and stuff. Jumping back on an e-bike after riding a conventional bike well, since my first go on an e-bike, the YT Decoy. Yeah, not a night and day difference. Obviously it makes it easier to get up the hills, but at a disadvantage of the manoeuvrability, the weight of it. The weight is definitely noticeable with this bike. No more so than the YT or probably any other e-bike in the same category, but still you can notice the weight. It is harder to manoeuvre, and it just handles differently, as you'd expect. It seems to pick up speed really fast downhill, probably due to the weight, but also because of the 90 Newton meter assistance. You can really accelerate fast out of corners, out of berms and stuff. As soon as you start getting a few pedal strokes in, back up to close to a cut-off at 15 mile an hour, which can really turn what would normally be like an average flat mellow trail into a bit more of an exciting fast-paced trail ride. So that's a positive. Not entirely sure that I've got the bike set up perfectly in terms of suspension. There's still a few bits I need to do to optimise that. I think at the moment all I've done is set the sag and adjusted the low speed compression, which I think is all you can adjust on that bike. So yeah, pretty happy with the way it rides so far. Turbo is definitely really powerful and gets you straight up the top of the hill, no problem. Yeah, so definitely happy with the power and the way it seems to bring in the power. The only slight odd thing, which I'm sure you can probably adjust on the app, is the overrun. So once you stop pedaling, it still assists you for a bit, which if you're trying to get over some routes or an obstacle can be quite helpful, I'm sure. But sometimes it kind of leads to a bit of run on. So what I mean by that is basically if you're lifting off the gas or stopping pedaling because you're trying to avoid an obstacle like a tree, obviously you've got that split second of where it's still powering you forward. A bit like understeering a car. Imagine if you turn into a corner, the front wheels start to slip. You let off the throttle, but for a split second it continues to add throttle to the car. You're still driving forward. It feels a little bit like that at times. Obviously the conditions weren't great, so probably not helping the matter. What else can I say about this bike? To be honest, the dropper post is great. The gears I'm not so sure about. The NX, I don't know if it's the NX or the SRAM. It just feels like you're changing gear under load. Even if you let off and you turn it down to say eco and you're trying to be really kind to it and change gear, it just feels like you're really straining the chain and the cassette, if that makes sense. So it's only recently, the last few days I've been thinking about the Decoy. It had the, I think, SLX drivetrain, Shimano, and every gear change was just precise. No matter what load it seemed to be under, it just changed nicely. And I can only compare it to like a conventional bike, like my Santa Cruz Nomad. When I change gear on that, on the GX, obviously if you're putting it under real load and then you change gear, it just doesn't feel very nice. It feels quite like you're going to snap the chain sort of thing. And every gear change feels like that on this NX. I guess because it's always under load. Even if you're pedaling lightly, if you're getting assist from the motor, yeah, it's under load. So not sure about that. We'll see how long the chain lasts and the cassette. At least NX stuff is cheap on the other hand. But yeah, ultimately I feel like the Shimano stuff is probably a nicer shifting gear setup and probably one I'd want long term, but we'll see. I did find the bike quite hard to pick up, as in the front end, picking it up to manual over routes and stuff. Not so much on the jumping side, but just like I say, manual in routes or to bunny hop anything. I don't know if it's purely down to the weight or the geometry or a mixture of the two, but yeah, not that easy to pick up the front end. And the front end does feel lower than like my Santa Cruz, for example. that big 220mm rotor on the front and the V4 brakes, which initially seemed a bit overkill potentially. As soon as you start going, you realise how much speed you can pick up on a Kenevo and how much speed it carries down the hill, and then suddenly, yeah, they don't seem so overkill anymore. And I'm pretty certain that 220mm rotors will be the norm for most e-bikes in this category. So 180, 170, 180, big bikes like that, especially with 29-inch wheels, I feel like a 220mm rotor would be perfectly normal, both front and rear. So yeah, pretty happy with the brakes, but yet to really push them to their limit. So we'll see how we get on with those. They already need bleeding, they've gone a bit spongy. I don't know if that's due to me being careless, spraying water over the top on the master cylinder, and then also I use compressed air to dry off the bike, and if I've blown any air into the top of that, I don't know if that's caused the problem, or if the air bubbles were already in the system and where I've used the bike they've just worked their way up or down to the piston. I don't know. Not at the end of the world. I'll rebleed those and I'm sure they'll be perfect for the rest of the duration of me using them. Yes, I used 1 bar of battery and 5 miles of riding. Don't think I'm going to have any issues with the 500 watt-hour battery. I can't see me going on super long rides that are going to use more than 500 watt-hours that often. Most of my rides are probably like a couple of hours. It'll only be the odd occasion where I'm on a long outing, and again I think there's probably enough battery life to cover that for the most part, but we'll see how we get on. The seat seems to be pretty comfortable. I did say that my Silverado WTB seat on my Santa Cruz was the best seat I've ever had. Most comfortable seat by far, but this one seems pretty good as well. Obviously I've only done 5 miles in the saddle, but it seems pretty comfortable, which is good because obviously on an e-bike there's a potential you'll spend a lot longer in the saddle, sat down and pedalling. So yeah, always good to know that you've got a comfortable seat. But again, that's a bit subjective, depends on how you match the seat, so the makeup of your backside basically and your bone structure and stuff like that. So obviously that's going to differ from person to person, and everyone's got a different preference when it comes to seats or saddles. But yeah, seems to be good so far. But yeah, that is pretty much my first experience of this bike, and that's about as much as I can think of to say at the moment. I'm going to try and get some more rides in on it soon, and hopefully I can give a proper update. I'm going to do some videos. I'm going to compare both the Santa Cruz and the Specialized, do back-to-back trail sessions and try and compare the timings, and hopefully that way I can give more of a real-time feedback on the differences between a normal bike and an e-bike. So what I mean by that is I can explain like the pros and cons on different sections of trail and stuff. I think that could be quite good, quite useful for some people, because I don't think it's a night and day difference. I didn't jump on an e-bike and go, yeah, that is the best thing since sliced bread. Although it's good to get you to the top of the hill, obviously there are disadvantages of the weight and stuff like that. So yeah, stay tuned for more videos relating to the e-bike and reviews of the e-bike and how I'm getting on with it basically. But yeah, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.